Delta and the Bannermen, the third serial of Doctor Who's 24th season, first broadcast in three parts from the 2nd to the 16th of November 1987. Now, before I start this review, I actually have to give a little bit of credit to the person whom I ended up being able to purchase this DVD from, fellow Whovian and YouTuber Isaac Whittaker-Dakin. He ended up posting. He and I are both part of a Doctor Who Facebook group, and he ended up posting about they were selling off several classic Doctor Who DVDs. So much like I did with the Cromford Collector's Corner and Terror of the Zygons, I ended up having a look at what was available, and I eventually decided on this one, Delta and the Bannermen from 1987. So thanks, Isaac. Anyway, the Seventh Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy, and his companion Mel Bush, played by Bonnie Langford, end up at a spaceport where they are announced as the 10 billionth customer, and the Tollmaster, played by 80s legend Ken Dodd, tells them that they have won a free trip. He said that he is taking a bus full of people from the Navarino race, which are kind of giant purple aliens who have been transformed to look like ordinary humans, and he's taking them on a spaceship bus, to Disneyland in 1959. Mel decides to hop on board. The Doctor says he'll follow behind in his TARDIS. Just doesn't necessarily trust. Anyway, it turns out that one of the passengers on board the bus is not a member of the Navarino race, but is in fact Queen Delta, played by Belinda Main, and she is queen of the Shimmeron race, a race of aliens who are currently being hunted down by Gavrock, played by Don Henderson, and his Bannermen. Now, if Doctor Who didn't already have an equivalent of the Nazis, as they did with the Daleks, then this lot are pretty close. They're seemingly trying to hunt down the Shimmeron people purely for entertainment, which, yeah, you can quickly gather these aren't nice people. But anyway, Mel and Delta board the bus along with the Navarinos, and they don't quite manage to make it to Disneyland in 1959. They end up crashing into a spaceship, and eventually when they get to Earth, they find themselves outside a holiday park in Wales named Shangri-La, which is very Butlins-esque, shall we say. That's how it was described by a family member I was watching this with. And they say to the people at Shangri-La Holiday Park, look, our bus is broken down, do you think we might just stay here for a little bit until we get repaired? And the head guy, named Burton, played by Richard Davies, goes, well, that's what we're here for. And so they just decide to go settle down and try and enjoy a short holiday while they get things sorted out, while also being pursued by the Bannermen. While there, they meet several interesting characters, including the pilots of the Navarino people, Murray, played by Johnny Dennis, a local lad named Billy, who attends the camp, played by David Kinder, who starts to fall in love with Delta, Gronwy, a local Welshman who lives down the road, played by Hugh Lloyd, who is rather keen on making honey, Ray, a local woman played by Sarah Griffiths, who's seemingly in love with Billy, even though he doesn't really reciprocate, and two American agents named Hawk and Weissmuller, played by Morgan Deere and Stubby Kay, who are trying to track down the satellite that was knocked out of orbit by our friends. Now, with Ray, played by Sarah Griffiths, as I said, she's in love with Billy, even though he doesn't really give her the time of day, and he is starting to fall in love with Delta. But from what I saw of the small pamphlet that comes inside every classic Doctor Who DVD, they did briefly consider making Ray a companion. And to be honest, I can kind of see why they would try and do this. I mean, Bonnie Langford will end up leaving Doctor Who one story later in Dragonfire, which I've already done a review for. But I could definitely see why they would consider making Ray a companion, and they did evidently recycle parts of her for Ace, who would end up being the next companion. I mean, as I said, she's in love with Billy, who doesn't really reciprocate, but she knows how to handle herself. she constantly rides a motorbike, a moped. She seems to know a lot about things. She learns stuff just to try and be with Billy, even though they grew up together. And you can definitely see that while she is sad at various points, she can take care of herself, which I do think they recycled a lot into Ace's character. Now, the only thing that I would really say about this story against it would be there's a point in, I think it's either part 2 or part 3, where the Bannermen have seemingly arrived and are trying to hunt down Delta, and they end up setting a load of traps, and so Mel and Burton tell everyone in the Navarino race party, look, we've got to get out of here, we've got to escape. So they get everyone loaded up onto the bus, and Murray says to her, do you want to tag along? And Mel says, no, I'll stick around to help out where things are needed. It's like, well, good luck to you. Gets aboard the bus, and then suddenly there's an explosion, and the Navarino race, or the Navarinos who were on board the bus, are seemingly killed. I mean, Mel does seem sad as Gavrock approaches and announces to him, you just murdered them! It's like, yeah, I don't care. And it's just like, it's kind of glossed over a little quickly. I mean, I would have thought there would have been kind of a lot more to do with the fact that these people just killed a busload of people, but anyway, they didn't. But there is some stuff that I did actually think was quite clever, like part 3 when they end up going to Guronwy to look for help, and the doctor says to him, have you got any honey, Guronwy? Like, 10,000 jars in the back shed. Which I thought was cool. And then when the Bannermen, they set up a load of traps, and one of the traps is when the Bannermen open the door, the shells collapse and collapse the honey onto them. And I was just like, oh, I wonder why they did that. So it's like, are the Bannermen supposed to be allergic to honey? Is that their kryptonite? I don't necessarily know why. They don't seem that bothered by it. But then when they stumble outside and then get attacked by the bees, I was like, oh, right. That's clever. I like that. I mean, and it ultimately ends up with, I think, the best way that it could have ultimately ended up. Gavrock is killed by one of his own traps. He sets up an explosive around the TARDIS so the Doctor can't use it, but ends up triggering it himself when Delta's child ends up disorientating him so much he stumbles into the field. I think that's cool. Billy ends up leaving with Delta and her new child in order to return to Shimmeron so he can be with her, and says to Ray, look after the bike for me. Which, I like that. I mean, even though Ray doesn't end up with Billy, she does end up with something that she treasures with him. I like that. And then Burton ends up with the story, seeing a next truckload of people arrive, and it's like, sorry, I gotta go. Good luck to you. I mean, I like that. I mean, even just with the Doctor taking off in the TARDIS with Mel on board, and then Hawk and Weissmuller are just sitting there like, that's the weirdest thing I've not seen all day. Which I thought was pretty cool. We even get to see a police box used in the way that police boxes were originally used back in the 1960s. Early on in the story, when Hawk and Weissmuller had used one of the phones in there to get in touch with the president, which I still think is nice to see. So, I will say that Delta and the Bannermen is a little cheesy, but then again, Butlin's-esque holiday in the 1950s, I can kind of give it a break. And I do think that this is a pretty nice story. I'm not sure it's one of the greats that people ultimately need to see, but if you watch it, I think you'll be pretty entertained. So that's my short little review of Delta and the Bannermen, and I'll leave a link down below to Isaac Whittaker-Dakin's channel, because you definitely should check him out. He's got some good Doctor Who videos on there. Anyway, that's my quick little review of Delta and the Bannermen. Now, I've only actually got 4 stories left of the 7th Doctor's era, those being Paradise Towers, Battlefield, Ghostlight, and The Curse of Fenric. So, yeah, I'm growing close to the end of Sylvester McCoy's era. But, you know what, I like this story. Anyway, till next time, see ya.